Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talk with Jacob Rapport, the creator of the Chanted Torah, which you can hear a sample of at the end of this podcast. We talk about what this project is all about, where his inspiration came from, what his next steps with the project are, and most importantly, where you can find his work on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from Jacob, the TC Jewfolk merch store is stocked up with new items for spring. You can look fun and stylish and help TC Jewfolk and its mission at the same time. Check it out at tcjewfolk.com/store. Welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Very excited to talk to you about a project which coworker and friend and your friend Genevieve Parker had told me about a while ago. She gave me a heads up on it, and now it is finally ready to sort of talk about and share with the world. You created the ChantedTorah.com. Tell me what the Chanted Torah is.
Yes, I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to talk about this project. I've been working on it for what feels like a long time at this point. It's been about a year and a half. Chanted Torah, what it says on the label. So I am chanting the Torah as an audiobook. I'm doing this as a professional production in a recording booth, chanting it in Hebrew, as you would hear it in services. The intention of recording the whole thing, start to finish, and distributing it as an audiobook.
I like that it's truth in advertising. Like, it is exactly what it says it is.
Yeah. Very, very important to be clear with your descriptions.
That's very true. There should be no confusion. So what inspired you to do this? Because this feels like a massive, massive undertaking.
Yeah, it's a big project. I'm talking about this now after having finished just the first book. There are 5 of them.
There are yes. This much I remember from day school.
Yes, and it's going to be a long project even from here on out. So actually, Sonia, who you know,
yes,
you did an interview with her about a year ago, back when she started up at Beth Jacob.
Yep.
Sonia was the inspiration for this project. So she came home from services, from Beth Jacob, and she'd missed the service. She'd missed the Torah service. She works there, so she wasn't in the room at the time. And she came home and she was trying to find the Torah service online, trying to find a chanted version of it, and couldn't find anything, really. So she called me over to help take a look, and so I looked, and we looked, and we looked. And, we did find some things. We did find some people who had, recorded parshes here or there, done bits and pieces, or really, tried to take on the whole project and do a lot of it. But in every version that we found, there were issues. There were
there were some flaws in the process.
There were things that if we had done it, we would do differently.
Sure.
So not minor things, right? So one version was, really slow and hesitant, like they really being really careful not to make mistakes, and as a result, it was just sort of choppy. There were some that were recorded, really cantorially and dramatically that were just, way over the top. There were some Orthodox versions where they were using, Ashkenazic pronunciations, saying, Beis Yisrael instead of, what we'd say.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, and then there was, Pocket Torah, which is on Sefaria, which is mostly people doing recordings, maybe in their car, or, the audio quality is way all over the place.
Sure.
It's, a bunch of different people.
Pretty inconsistent.
Yeah. So we looked at each other. Sonia and I looked at each other and said, Jacob, I've got all the skills that are needed to do this. I'd been recording audiobooks for a few years.
Really?
At that point.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd gone to Hebrew day school. I could read Hebrew. I gotten a music degree. I'd been in choirs. I'd taken voice, so I could sing.
Okay.
So really the only thing that I was missing was that I didn't go to JTS or HUC. I wasn't a cantor.
Right.
But I know some cantors. I know some really good cantors, actually.
Yes.
So I figured I could fill that gap with some professional consulting, and we could do this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what the name of the app was.
Yeah.
But there,
Thinking of Trope Trainer.
I am thinking of Trope Trainer because I remember when I read Torah for my oldest child's bat mitzvah.
Sure.
And then read maybe a year later on the anniversary. It would have been the 30th anniversary of my bar mitzvah. Mm-hmm. I read, and I used that as my guide to help essentially memorize. It
Right.
had been a long time since day school,
Yep.
long time since I'd read Torah.
Yep.
Really didn't feel comfortable with the idea.
Yeah.
So I used Trope Trainer, and particularly, I felt more comfortable at my daughter's bar mitzvah reading, but my bar mitzvah anniversary, I could not have read faster without passing out from not breathing. Right? So, like, I would think something like this is going to be probably really helpful in sort of helping get over the anxiety that can come from. Because this is, like, getting up and reading Torah in front of a congregation is a hard thing to do. It takes a lot to be able to want to and feel able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Sony and I had our second wedding a month ago.
Okay.
Our first wedding was a COVID wedding.
Okay.
Yep. So we had our Jewish wedding about a month ago, and I read Torah for our wedding, for the Ufruf.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's hard. Let me tell you, it is a lot easier doing it right out of the tikkun in a booth.
Then on the scroll with the yod.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, where it's all memorized, there's no punctuation, yeah. So, I recorded my parsha for myself and learned from that, and it was still hard. Yeah. So, I know how hard it is for synagogues to even get people to read Torah, and yeah.
No, it's hard, and it's good when they, in the sort of annual honors book around Rosh Hashanah that comes out, they acknowledge those who, I would say, have the courage to get up and do that, because it is a hard thing. It is hard to learn, and if you're comfortable with the language and the trope, it's a lot easier to do. But I think that's the vast minority of folks.
Totally, and I think that really just emphasizes what an important project that this is, and that it's for, there's a lot of different audiences that can benefit from it. Obviously, B'nai Mitzvahs is a huge one, right?
Absolutely.
So cantors won't have to record the parsha for the kids. They'll just say, this is the thing. It's great. But adults who also want to read Torah, they're people like Sonia who want to listen to the Torah or want to keep up with the Torah portion. I know some people who are in communities where they can't get access to services. They can't make it to services either. They're old or can't drive, or are in communities that are really small, and they could use this as their Torah service. And I think this would be something nice to just a lot of people can enjoy just listening to this, right, as a meditation, or just let it wash over you, right?
I mean, I think I totally get that, and I think, but it obviously, like, if you're sitting in services and you're following along, it obviously doesn't have the commentary, which
Sure, yeah.
or the translation, but I think a well chanted piece of Torah is it can be calming, potentially, if you understand the language and you know it and you just want to listen,
feel it,
and feel what it brings. Like, there could be something really soothing to that. That makes sense. Yeah. So one of the books is in the books. Is there a recording schedule for the other four? What's the timetable for you?
Yeah. So, like I said, book one is done. It will be available on May 23rd. Pre-release is available in a few places, and I have not started recording for the next books yet.
Okay.
I'd like to start as soon as book 1 is out, but truthfully, this is a really long-term project, right? It's going to take another 3, 4, maybe 5 years to do the rest of this. And ultimately, it's going to depend if people buy it.
Sure.
If people like the book.
No, absolutely.
If I did a good job. So, the project could need some support to get to the finish line.
Which totally makes sense. How long did it take you to get through Bereshit?
So from the very start, from the beginning of all the learning and the reading and the practicing and the consulting and working with with my proof listener to recording the last word was about 12 or 13 months.
Wow.
However, I did have to start over at some point because I wasn't satisfied with the way I was doing things. I needed to change the way I was pronouncing some things.
Okay.
It was about 8 months, so about 4 or 5 of those could be cut off for the next books.
I was going to say, because now you've done, obviously, the proof listening is still going to have to happen, but the consulting, the learning, that piece of it,
right?
You won't have to replicate, I would say, probably 90% of that.
Yeah, believe it or not, if you do something full-time for more than a year, you will get better at it. So yeah, I've gotten a lot better at all these things.
No, that absolutely makes sense. So one of the interesting things that the website talks about is that you mentioned, some cantors who you did some consulting with. That this was sort of done in partnership with the Cantors Assembly.
Yes,
which is the governing body for the conservative Jewish movement's Chazanim.
Yes. This is really an unbelievable blessing. The congregation that Sonia and I just happened to belong to, even before COVID, the cantor there, Chazan Joanna Dalkin, amazing person, amazing cantor, incredible musician, happens to be the president of the Cantors Assembly this year.
Yep.
And, approached her about this project. I started off just by sending her a recording of me chanting Torah, and she was, over the moon. She was really encouraging, and I told her about this project, and she was very enthusiastic about it and very supportive. And she agreed. This project, this kind of thing doesn't exist yet. Right. And could exist. So she's been tremendously supportive. She gave me a lot of feedback, a lot of information. She loaned me her copy of Joshua Jacobson's Chanting the Hebrew Bible, which is the authoritative work.
Okay.
It's a tome, and she connected me with one of her cantor friends, Sarah Geffen-Geller, who's a retired cantor. She's out in South Carolina right now, and she's been a partner with me throughout this entire project. Been wonderful to work with, and proof listened to every word with me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. We are also Adath members, and Chazan Dalkin is wonderful.
Yes.
No question.
Cannot say enough good things about her.
No, she's fabulous. So it's great that, we're lucky. There's so many great cantors. I don't want to just. I'm happy to just single out Chazan Dalkin, but we are very lucky in the Twin Cities to have a number of really fabulous.
Absolutely.
One of the things you say, which I find really interesting, and sort of in the about page of the website, so there isn't a halacha established to be followed for this type of work. Why is it important that there was that partnership with the Cantors Assembly that gave it sort of that air of legitimacy? Yeah.
So unlike a Sofer Stam writing a Torah scroll, right? There's a whole, like you said, halacha. There are many rules that go along with writing a Torah scroll in order to make it kosher. There isn't a set of rules that goes into making an audio Torah, right? Mm-hmm. There are plenty of rules about how to chant it live and in services. Yep. But there isn't a halacha for an audio Torah. So I wanted to do this right. I wanted to be as authentic as possible and, as kosher as possible. So by working with the Cantor's Assembly and following all their advice, we can get this as close as possible to having a real hechsher on it. So by working with Zondalkin, that's what we've been able to achieve. Yeah.
And the timing of the release in late May is close to the Cantor's Assembly convention, which is here in the Twin Cities.
Perhaps, yes. It might be on
maybe a little...
the last day of the Cantor's Assembly
Amazing.
Convention. Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah. We there was a consideration to delay it just a little bit to Shavuot, but I thought that getting it sooner was good. Yeah.
I mean, the Cantors aren't necessarily like your target audience because they know this stuff, but it does, getting that kind of buy-in at such a high level really matters, I would think, to, again, sort of stake the legitimacy of this endeavor.
Right. Like I said, I'm not a cantor, but I want this to be kosher. I want this to be hechshered, and having like you said, buy-in from cantors, from professionals. If this is a tool that I can provide to them that will make their lives and their jobs easier, teaching B'nai Mitzvahs or teaching congregants. If this can be a tool for them, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
So you mentioned, audiobook narration that you've done in the past. That helps to understand sort of the mechanics of recording, I would think. But where did the chops to actually chant Torah come from?
So, like I said, I went to Jewish day school, and that got me a little bit of the ways. I can read Hebrew, but like I said, I'm not fluent. I can't speak Hebrew, and that's a little bit awkward for somebody taking on a project like this. But no, it came down to practice. I sat down with the Tikkun and the Joshua Jacobson book, hashed things out after hour. I recorded myself. I edited things down. I listened. I sent things to Joanna, and she gave me feedback. And it went back and forth for months doing this. It took a lot of work.
And also, Torah Hebrew and conversational Hebrew, same language, sort of, but very different at the same time, it feels like.
Yeah, right. Modern Hebrew is not historical biblical Hebrew. Yeah.
Right. You also have a music degree, which helps.
Helps a lot. It really provided me with the ear to be able to listen to myself, give myself feedback, and refine things. Also keep things in tune. Very important. Some of the recordings that we'd found that I talked about earlier, all over the place. In my production, the way that I kept things in tune was I found a mini keyboard, a small piano that fit on my lap, and I'd plug it into the interface, and then have the sound from the keyboard go into my headphones and not into the audio. So I could play the chord, so I'd be rooted tonally, and I could sing, and it would be in key, and then for the next verse I could play whatever chord that was and have that and continue on in key.
Wow.
Yeah. So the whole thing is consistent. It's all in the same key.
Which is smart. I mean, because you're right, it keeps it consistent, and because it's a product, you want people to buy. It should sound as even and as professional as possible.
Right. Yeah. It should sound professional, and it's not something you think about. When it's not something. It's one of those things that you don't realize is a problem until it's really obvious that it's a problem.
Right.
No, it's really nice when you skip from chapter to chapter and you're not all over the in a different register every time. Yeah. Okay. It's good that it's consistent. It's good that this is the same person recording, every parsha. Yeah.
So you are a graduate of Ohio State University. I will not say the word that goes before that because I think y'all sound ridiculous when you do that.
Yeah. Some people might think so. The is a very important word. And we use the word "the" all the time. You can put it there. It's allowed.
I'm not going to. As a native of the state of Michigan,
Yes.
and a proud graduate of Michigan State University, I will not call you that word, Ohio State University.
I understand. I must say that my dad went to Michigan, and so did his brother and sister. And he sent both of his kids to the Ohio State University. So some people can learn from their mistakes. It's okay.
I'm no Michigan fan. You won't get a rise out of me for that one.
No, it's not a big deal. I went to one football game at Ohio State, and I didn't even buy the ticket, so it's fine. No big deal.
It's okay. So you're one of the few who don't go there for the football experience.
Yeah,
then.
no.
Fair enough. Are you from Ohio then?
Yes, grew up in Cleveland,
Okay.
went to Ohio State, lived in Dayton, Ohio for a few years, and then moved to the Twin Cities in about 2016.
What was it that brought you to the Twin Cities?
So Minneapolis, St. Paul was on my list of places. I had a short list of places that I'd want to settle when I grew up.
Yeah.
And the opportunity came around that I was able to move here. The company that I was working for in Dayton went through bankruptcy. Very different than going bankrupt.
Yeah.
And got bought by a company here in Minnesota, Taylor Corporation.
Oh, sure.
So I'm not there anymore, but they moved me to Minnesota to work for them.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was great. I have an aunt and uncle here already in town, and my family's had connections here for a long time, so it was a good place to come.
It's nice that there's something like that to help sort of root you in a new place.
Yes, and of course it was on my list. Minnesota was on my list for a lot of different reasons. I like the state, I like the city, I like the emphasis on nature and all the parks. I like the politics. There's a lot of things to like about Minnesota.
For sure. So, Chanted Torah is obviously it's a side project. It is, time consuming to be sure, but it is. I can't imagine your full-time occupation.
Believe it. Yeah. No. This is a big project.
Yes.
So when I was recording full throttle, my day was record for 3 to 4 hours in the morning and edit in the afternoon.
Oh wow.
And that's a day.
That is a day.
It takes a lot of time. I take an embarrassing amount of takes sometimes. Sometimes it's really hard to get exactly the melody over exactly the right words right. It can take, it's very time consuming. Editing is very time consuming. Listening back is very time consuming. If there are any, music producers out there, that, engineering and editing is very time consuming. It's literally an exercise in that's dependent on the passage of time.
Yeah.
Right. It's literally time consuming. So no, this is a really big project.
It's a phenomenal one. It's really interesting that to sort of see you jump full throttle into this, and again, 20% done, not knowing what the next 80% holds.
Right. It might be faster if an organization were putting on a project like this and had multiple people working on it. But, if an organization wanted to sponsor something like this, it would be a tremendous endeavor. It would be very costly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the people that you need and the resources that you need to do this. You'd need to select the cantor, the narrator who's going to do this. Mm-hmm. You'd need to book a recording studio for all of the time that you're going to be recording. You'd need to find the editor. You'd need to have an engineer. You'd need to have a producer who would do this. Yeah. And you'd need to pay all these people for all of their time and expertise to do this. And it would take a long time. You have to find all the people who were available to do this. What it comes down to is I'm wearing all of those hats. And so the cost of that is I have to do all those jobs, and I can't do all of them at the same time.
No, that's very true.
Yeah.
That definitely drags the process out of it.
Yes. So,
and because you're, engineer, producer, editor, narrator,
right.
I know there's other roles I missed, but because you're doing all those things, you're going to hear it differently. So your, I'm going to say mistakes, but the imperfections in a certain take that require you to say, screw it, cut, do it again, is going to, it will make the process take longer because you're going to hear things and catch things that an external producer or engineer may not catch.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Right. When we listen back to ourselves, we're often much more critical.
Oh, I hate. I rest assured, dear listeners, I listen to all of these as I go through the editing process. I don't love the sound of my own voice though. Like when I'm listening to it, we are, I think, our own harshest critics.
Yes, right. Where somebody else in the booth next door might be willing to overlook any kind of imperfection or whatever. Yeah, no, I really want to get things right, and I hope when you listen to it that attention to detail really comes across.
And I think the other challenge of having an external producer engineer in the other side of the glass of the booth is this isn't in English.
Yes.
So you got to have somebody who knows the language and knows what to listen for to know whether to say that doesn't sound right. Because to them, almost none of this is going to sound right.
Correct. Right. All of those different hats that I just talked about wearing. If an organization were to put on, it's not just an ordinary editor or engineer or producer who you need to find. You'd need to find people who, are probably Jewish.
Yes.
Right?
And not just Jewish, that they're Jewish and also fluent enough in, Torah Hebrew to be able to say, yeah, no, that wasn't right. Do it again.
Right.
They're more willing to roll with the punches probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there of course would be benefits to working with a team who, had their own opinions about, the right way to do things and, could be good collaborators. But also there's benefits to just doing this yourself and doing it the way, the way I think is the right way.
I mean, the flip side, of course, is the cost to that is that we are several years away probably from the completion, assuming there is.
Yeah.
We get to that.
So, that's okay because once it's done, it will be there.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to go away.
No, that's very true. Can I ask you about your audiobook narration?
Sure. It's.
I find it fascinating. Like, obviously, it's a thing people do. I've been, listening to. I mean, my experience, family experience with audiobooks goes back to books on tape.
Right.
In the 80s, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, like, I am very familiar with the medium.
Yeah.
So, how did you get into that?
So, recording audiobooks was something that I realized that I wanted to do only a few years out of college, really.
Okay.
I bought the equipment maybe in 2015 and started trying to do audiobooks on the side while I was working, got some basic experience. And in 2019, I decided to try and make a go of it full time, and I quit my day job. I was an HRIS analyst at the time, working on HR systems.
Okay.
The systems that manage benefits and payroll and other information for organizations. Yeah, I decided to pursue it full time, and the vast majority of my audiobook work has been done under pseudonyms. It's not under my real name. Very common in the industry. So yeah, I recorded over 25 audiobooks, and all available on Audible. But I must qualify that I would not by any stretch say that I have made it. all of my work has been done, freelancing directly with authors. I'm not working with a publishing house yet. But, I would like to do that someday, maybe after this project is over.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So how long does it take to read a book?
So finished audio is about 10,000 words per hour. So you're, maybe a 200-page or 250-page book might be 60 or 70,000 words.
Yeah.
And the rule of thumb is, well, I don't know about rule of thumb. Some people do it better than others, or more efficiently. But anywhere from 3 to 6 hours of uncut audio can turn into 1 hour of finished audio. And for this Torah project, it's a lot longer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say how much longer.
That's okay.
Yeah. Because
it's not reading.
No, it's not.
It's not just reading. Like, if you were just reading the Hebrew,
right,
you could probably do it significantly faster.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yep. Yeah. This is singing. It is a performance. It is a musical performance from start to finish.
Just wild.
Yeah. And acting, right? There's characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not doing voices, right? Right. I'm not doing a voice for, Jacob and Abraham and Rachel and Pharaoh. I'm not doing different voices for different characters. I think that would be too distracting, and the characters aren't always there for long enough to make it worth it anyway. God is a recurring character. He does come around.
He's mentioned once or twice in the books.
Yep.
From what I recall.
Has some speaking roles. But not doing voices. But I am acting, right? I didn't just want this to be a straight performance, right, where I'm just singing this, to sound nice. I want the meaning to come through, right? If you're somebody who understands Hebrew and you listen to this, the emotions need to match up with the words that are there, right? It's going to be really weird if somebody's, sad about somebody dying or something tragic happening, and the performance of it is, all upbeat and exciting, right? So even though I'm not a fluent Hebrew speaker, getting the performance to match the context was very important. So I read the translation side by side to make sure I knew what I was saying as I was saying it.
Right, because there is plenty of dark stuff in the Torah.
Yeah.
And you don't want to sound peppy and upbeat when, Lot's wife is being turned into a pillar of salt.
Right.
For example, as you read in...
or the next story.
Right, that's right. Yeah, plenty of dark stuff in each of the...
yes.
In each of the books of the Bible that you don't want to sound peppy when it is not the right moment.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, it's an amazing project. Where can people find this work?
Yeah, so the Chanted Torah is already available on Google Play Books. It's available on Apple Books. It is available, or rather it will be available on Libby. And hopefully by the time of the publishing of this podcast, it will be available on Spotify. Spotify should be the biggest distributor, biggest marketplace that'll be available. The one place it's not going to be available is Audible, actually.
Interesting. How come?
They don't play as nice with their authors. If you want to distribute it on other marketplaces, they pay about half of what everybody else pays.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and if I published on Audible, I actually wouldn't be able to sell it in Israel, which is obviously important to me.
Interesting.
So that left Audible out. Yeah.
No, that'll do it.
So Spotify, I know people in Israel do use Spotify. I don't know about for audiobooks. There's another audiobook marketplace called Storytel that sells in Israel
Okay.
and in the Middle East internationally. If there's any Australia or New Zealand listeners, it's going to be up on Booktopia.
Awesome.
That's a marketplace over there. So
Taking this global. That's great.
yeah. Like I said, the pre-release is available now. It'll be available in full on May 25th. Excuse me, May 23rd. Sorry.
May 23rd.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Very exciting. Last couple questions, and we will get you out of here. First, what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
That's a pivot.
Yes. It is I always end with the same last two questions.
Okay.
I can't always remember the order of which I ask first and which I ask second. It tends to vary based on mood, vibe, whatever. But it is 99% a total curveball from the previous conversation.
Yes. That's,
have I bought you enough time now?
You knew.
Yeah.
Favorite Jewish holiday. There's a lot of good ones. I think rather than a holiday per se, I think my favorite service is Tashlich. I always it's always a good moment for me. Always really meaningful and moving for me. A good moment of reflection. Yeah, that comes around that time of year.
Yeah.
Or surrounded by high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur.
It is the time for reflection.
Yeah. So I like Tashlich, and you get to be outside.
Yeah. That helps, and we're in a great place to do that too.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite Jewish food?
My favorite Jewish food. Again, a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the foods along the cured meats spectrum, I think, would fall under my favorites. Big roast beef fan, corned beef fan over here.
Yeah.
Lox.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So cured meats and fishes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think lox counts as a cured meat.
Yeah, probably
flesh
does.
of an animal.
Yeah.
It's, you can have it with cheese, or cream cheese.
You could have it with cream cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Jacob Rapport, thank you so much for joining me. We will have links to the Chanted Torah and some of the spots you mentioned where you can buy it in the show notes. Best of luck with this project going forward, and we look forward to keeping an eye on on when the next books are coming out. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. It's been a privilege to be here. I've really enjoyed my time with you today. And please, listeners, please visit The Chanted Torah, Torah, thechantedtorah.com. You can listen to a sample there. You can see for yourself if I did it right. Please buy, please support. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
The Who the Folk podcast is a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network and a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. V'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu v'choshech al penei tehom. V'ruach Elohim mirachefet al penei hamayim.
ויאמר אלוהים יהי אור, ויהי אור. וירא אלוהים את האור כי טוב, ויבדל אלוהים בין האור ובין החושך. ויקרא אלוהים לאור יום, ולחושך קרא לילה. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד. ויאמר אלוהים יהי רקיע בתוך המים, ויהי מבדיל בין מים למים. ויעש אלוהים את הרקיע, ויבדל בין המים אשר מתחת לרקיע, ובין המים אשר מעל לרקיע. ויהי כן. ויקרא אלוהים לרקיע שמים, ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום